Rider in MotoGP this weekend has done a single lap in wet weather conditions. All of their sessions has been dry. Now there's a detailed meeting going on down in pit lane. You can see there the man with the headset on the left-hand side with the IRTA black rain jacket. That's Mike Trimby, International Race Teams Association president. Right in the thick of it was Michele Mussini there, the Gresini team boss. Philip Salac, of course, was his man second in that Grand Prix. I can see Akiayo down there again, Luca Brivio, also Gino Borsoi.
Yeah, where's his rule book? Pit lane's going to open, according to our information there on screen, at 2:05 local time. So if that is indeed correct, we will have the quick restart procedure. They will head out to the grid for one sighting lap. There's the confirmation from the end of pit lane as the marshal holds up the 5-minute board. They will head out to the grid for the sighting lap. They will then have a warm-up lap, and then they'll go racing for 5 laps to hand out 25 World Championship points.
What was the Portimao restart? 7 laps, was it? Or a little bit more? This one's going to feel like a proper sprint race. We're going to get sprint races in MotoGP next year, aren't we? A welcome addition, a historic and groundbreaking change for the MotoGP World Championship. Well, this is a sprint race Moto2 style for the second time in 2022. Ayagura's got to get himself back in the zone, get the concentration and focus back. Nobody better on the grid at doing that than the Japanese start. The quick restart procedure then will commence at 14:05 local time. That's basically the riders are released from the grid. They do the sighting lap. They have one mechanic standing on the grid waiting for them just to make sure that everything's okay with their machine. And then we'll be back underway for what's going to feel like a short, sharp burst, a little bit like the rain here in Buriram. 5 laps will be the Grand Prix of Thailand for Moto2 in 2022.
And full points will be awarded for the 5-lap sprint, of course, because we've already completed quite a lot of racing already to this stage. Seen plenty of action, of course, at the front as Philip Salac looks to take in what's gone on so far. Of course, the adrenaline will have been pumping, and he'll have probably just been thinking about each corner and not so much about what was at stake. But will the moment now be dawning on Philip Salac? So all of a sudden, he's got a real chance of challenging for a first ever Moto2 Grand Prix victory. He's not been anywhere near the podium, of course, so far this season. A best finisher of 9th so far for Salac, which was back at the British Grand Prix, and 1 podium in his entire Moto3 career, which was in slightly iffy conditions back at Le Mans last year. Salac will certainly have no fear, but will suddenly the pressure of what's potentially awaiting him dawn on his shoulders now.
So the fans will be waiting expectantly for the restart of this Moto2 race. Sadly for them, it will not feature their big hero, Somkhat Jantra. He was caught out when he was in the lead of that Grand Prix on the 2nd lap, crashing out at turn number 4, the same place where Cambodia also went out of 2nd place on the very first lap. So then the countdown to the pit lane opening is under 2 minutes. The riders will be released from their garages. They'll do the formation lap. They'll be met by one of their team members, and then we'll be underway for a 5-lap Grand Prix here in Buriram.
It is a point worth making there. You can see it right on your screen. The pit lane will only be open for 60 seconds. And of course, we did already see 3 teams get it wrong on the grid before the race actually did get underway with the rain on grid procedure. We saw Lorenzo Dalla Porta, Albert Arenas and Manuel Gonzalez having to be pushed off the grid because they hadn't got their tyres changed in time. I don't think anyone will be necessarily changing tyres here unless they go for a fresh wet tyre for this 5-lap sprint. The rain is falling again, we hear in pit lane from Simon Crafart, but we're 60 seconds away from the pit lane opening. They're going to have to get out there, and before long they will be racing once again. There you can see confirmation on your screens. It is absolutely hammering it down once again.
The problem is, though, now, with the rain battering Buriram yet again, will it be safe enough to actually make this 5-lap restart at the time schedule? Yes, start has been delayed as the rain has started to fall heavier again. We were, what, just 60 seconds away from the pit lane opening for the quick restart procedure, but the race has been delayed due to weather conditions yet again. So all we can do now is sit tight, sit and wait and hope for the rain relenting at some point, because there's been a further delay here in Buriram. Race delayed due to weather conditions again.
Yeah, it's absolutely bucketing it down in pit lane once again. And again, it's all about keeping your head. It's all about keeping cool in these conditions. Of course, Tony Arbolino, who we saw sitting in pit lane, he's looking at a potential pole position. Maybe a small part of Tony Arbolino will be perhaps wondering whether this race will indeed restart at all, and he might be handed a slightly fortuitous victory. Of course, we'd completed just over half of the prescribed distance earlier on. It was going to be a 16-lap Grand Prix. We just moved on to lap 9 of that second race. So we have got precedent for this before, of course. Remember, back in Moto3 at the Circuit of the Americas last season, we saw a race that was restarted twice. And in the end, it was Ethan Guevara who led at the first stoppage, who was declared the winner in the end. After the second restart did not make the required distance to declare a result. So it might be important that to keep a note if we do restart, and particularly if we don't, what the order is here now with Tony Arbolino currently leading this Grand Prix. If we do restart, it would be Arbolino, Salaci, Canet on the front row of the grid, Dixon, Lopez and Ogura on row 2. Augusto Fernandez would head row 3 ahead of Roberts and Kubo. Celestino Vietti would start 10th ahead of Sean Dillon Kelly and Barry Baltus. Tiger Harder, the sole Japanese rider, well, the sole Japanese rider just outside the top 10. He's 13th ahead of Arenas and Schrotter. Pedro Acosta, who did not enjoy those conditions, clearly nor did Jake Dixon there as he shakes his head in pit lane. Acosta would be 16th on the grid ahead of Van den Gorberg and Ben Schneider. Sam Lowe's 19th ahead of Jorge Navarro, who had started the initial race, of course, in 9th position. We qualified in 9th position. He's 20th. And then we do still have 5 other riders who would take the start. Alessandro Zacconi, Nicolo Antonelli, Marcos Ramirez, Simone Corsi and Manuel Gonzalez completing the field. Simon, quickly down to you.
Just a couple of thoughts, guys, while everyone's having meetings, and I've been trying to get someone to talk, but you can imagine everyone that's actually in the race wants to focus on their job, and some of the guys like Somkat don't want to talk because he's not happy, you know, even though he's still smiling, he's not happy. So just a couple of thoughts for you is 5 laps, you know, that's a part of a world championship. If I was team manager, I would be worried, you know, about sending my riders out for 5-lap dash, you know, because it's not like you can tell these young riders to, you know, just take it easy. They're not going to listen. They know it's 5 laps. They're going to go for it and risk more than usual, you know, because there's no managing of anything, no energy managing, no tyre managing, nothing. So for me, I would like to see, it's only my feeling, and I don't make the rules, you know, but I'd like to see them just give them half points for what happened, you know. The thing is, you can't give full points without making that 3/4 distance, which was the 16 wet laps, which we only did half of. So I would love to see them say, here's half points to the guys that did a great job in that 8 laps, and leave it at that rather than risk in the 5 that's coming, you know.
It's a good point, Simon. Very, very difficult conditions right the way through that Grand Prix. We're seeing some of the initial highlights of that Grand Prix. Cameron Bobier going down on the very first lap when he had mowed his way all the way up from 11th on the grid up into 4th. Somkat Chantra also an early casualty in that Grand Prix. Philip Salach coming through after the crash for Chantra to take the lead. Arbolino was a rising threat in that Grand Prix, coming through the field and taking over from Aaron Canet into second place. Canet then fell back into the clutches of Jake Dixon before Salach made that mistake very soon before the stoppage as he lost the lead to Tony Arbolino. And it is worth saying, of course, not that Philip Salach will want to hear this argument, but if we don't restart this Grand Prix, then that could be a moment that eventually cost Philip Salach a Grand Prix victory. But I'm sure that's not on his mind at the moment as the team look to explain the situation. Trying to eavesdrop in what's going on there down in pit lane. The discussions continue down in pit lane. Fabio Quartararo, of course, has got a MotoGP race to come. That race is due to get underway in 50 minutes' time as he tries to catch the eye of Jake Dixon in the Aspar box. But Quartararo goes into this upcoming MotoGP Grand Prix leading the World Championship. And of course, with the memories of Mandalika fresh in his mind, where we saw situations and conditions rather reminiscent of this. I'm not sure it is shorts and t-shirts whether Fabio, as he makes his way quickly down the start-finish straight, to try and get an idea of what is going to go on here. But Quartararo has plenty to lose in this MotoGP race upcoming. Due to start at the top of the hour, Pecco Bagnaia will also be keeping a very close eye on proceedings here and working out, A, what's going to happen with this Moto2 race, but also what it's going to mean for the MotoGP race that he is due to start. He goes into the MotoGP race, of course, second in the World Championship and due to start from the front row of the grid.
Well, he looks pretty relaxed, doesn't he, Pecco Bagnaia? I'm sure inside, though, there's a few butterflies because it looks like we're going to have a wet MotoGP Grand Prix at some stage later on this afternoon. Let's hope we do, because as you can see there, the rain continuing to pound this Buriram circuit. There's race direction, Dorna representative Loris Capirossi. It's unbelievable. At some point on the track it's dry, and in other places it's really wet. Talk really about localised rain. Yeah, and when it's wet, it's properly wet around this Buriram circuit. So the rain continues to fall. There's Fabio Quartararo having a little chat with Aaron Canet. Whatever it is they're talking about, they can have a laugh about it anyway. Maybe it's all about whether they want to trade Dicky Bows, potentially. Fabio's a bit of a fashion aficionado, isn't he, in the MotoGP paddock. So, the helicopter shot. That shot tells you the full story of what's now been a very disrupted race day here in Thailand. We had a full, dry, classic Moto3 race. No spoilers here, we won't give away what happened. But that was run in pretty hot, humid and sunny conditions. Not really a taste of what was to come, unfortunately, because since just before the schedule started, what was a full 24-lap Moto2 race, almost an hour ago now, doesn't it? The rain started to fall. We had the rain on grid procedure. We did get underway over a shortened 16-lap distance, and then the rain started to get so heavy when Tony Arbolino had just got into lead on Filip Salac. Race direction left with no option but to call out the red flags. So the problem is now then, just how long will it take the wettest parts of this circuit to clear and drain when this rain continues to fall? That's the issue. That's going to be the question mark facing race direction.
Well, two of the riders who we were telling you about as we were running through what the likely grid is going to be when we get started, we can update you on two of them. Manuel Gonzalez, if he does start this Grand Prix, he will have to start it from the pit lane, we're being told on our timing screens. And I mentioned Lorenzo Dalla Porta, who rather curiously went out on slicks at the start of the Grand Prix after getting pushed on the grid. Clearly thought it was worth the gamble, but clearly neither he nor the Italtrans team had seen the lake at turn 3 on the opening lap of the Grand Prix. So by the time he went out there, it took him about half an hour to get back to the pits. He did not complete sufficient laps in that Grand Prix because he was so far behind after that delay. He wasn't classified when the race got red flagged, so even though he was still running, he will not be allowed to take the restart because he was unclassified when the race got stopped.
There's only one guy that would run slicks in this one, and that's Brad Binder in MotoGP, isn't it? Joking aside, of course. Pedro Acosta, when will he get to start this shortened 5-lap sprint race here then in Moto2? Confirmation coming this weekend. The least surprising news of all here this weekend in Thailand. Pedro Acosta re-upping with the Red Bull KTM squad next year, joined in that project by Albert Arenas. You can see there, just a stone's throw away from this circuit. Looks like heavy rain continues to hit Buriram. You can just see on the right-hand side of your picture, middle of the right-hand side of your picture, the Buriram United Football Stadium, the magnificently named, the fantastically named Thunder Castle. What a great way.
Yeah, never a more apt name, given the rain that's falling today. I think a lot of people within this paddock, including yours truly, are taking a Buriram United shirt home with them. I'd have to say they're probably producing some more success than the teams that the guys in this coverage box currently support, although one of them is affiliated with Buriram United.
Step away from that conversation. Yes, of course, my beloved Leicester City, owned by Thai owners. We're not going to talk too much about football, seeing as we are absolutely rock bottom of the Premier League. Back in MotoGP here in Buriram, there is Loris Capirossi and Franco Ancini. We've seen that a few times this year already, haven't we? Those two out in the BMW M3 safety car, checking current track conditions. They are just now coming through turn number 4. This was a part of the circuit before the red flag came out where we lost Cambobi on the very first lap on the curbs when he was second, and on the very next circuit, poor old Somkiat Chantra streaking away. He crashed out of the lead. Now there's some updates to bring you. Pit lane will open, some good news to bring you. Pit lane will open at 14:20 p.m. local time. That is exactly 5 minutes away from now. There you go on your screens, the new schedule. schedule. The pit lane open at 14:20 will be the quick restart procedure.
There's the marshal once again. He's done that before once already, waving the 5-minute board. We now need to pray that the weather gods are on our side and that we do get the race up and running. This 5-lap dash, and then it will be a quick turnaround. I'd imagine at this stage, without knowing, but I'd imagine there will be a short delay to the MotoGP race, which is due to get underway in 45 minutes time from now. We've got a Moto2 race, of course. They'll have a warm-up lap after a sighting lap, and then the race itself, which will take a period of time. Whatever happens, it will be a quick turnaround into the MotoGP race. Philippe Salach looking for some dry gloves to make sure he's got all the grip he needs on the handlebars when he goes back out on track on that Grassini Racing Kalex, of course, starting from the middle of the front row.
Some of the guys in this Grand Prix now are going to go for hell for leather, aren't they? Nothing to lose. They can throw everything at it, take the big risks. That won't be the case for Ayagura and Augusto Fernandez. Of course, they will need to be pushing. They will be taking risks, but maybe not on the same scale as riders that are not in the thick of that World Championship battle. This man certainly falls into that category. Tony Arbolino, not out of the equation, that he might actually still wrestle for 4th place in the World Championship away from Celestino Vietti. Been a good recent run of form actually for Arbolino. 7th in Misano, top 5s in both Aragon, and a top 6 in Japan as well.
Of course, his teammate Sam Lowe's returning to action this weekend. This certainly wasn't the return to racing that he had in mind in these kind of conditions, although I guess it's not going to be too much of a physical strain going out there for 5 laps. Sam Lowe's will take the restart of this Grand Prix, actually exactly where he started the initial race, in 19th position on the grid. He'll be just making sure he gets to the finish of this 5-lap sprint in one piece and look ahead to Phillip Island, which is the race that he's had his eye on right throughout this recovery from injury for Sam Lowe's. He's had his eye on the Australian Grand Prix in Phillip Island, a circuit he knows and loves so well, to be back something approaching his full peak physical condition.
Let's quickly go back down to a pit lane then. It's been not an easy weekend for the Factory Aprilia team. Does a wet race in MotoGP hold some hope, though, for Aleix Espargaro? He said yesterday if it was a wet race, he'll go all in, take the big risk to try and close some of that 25-point deficit he has in the World Championship to Fabio Quattro. Let's see from the Aprilia man now down in pit lane with Simon.
Yes, and also about this Moto2 race, Aleix, while these guys are getting ready, can you give us an idea how you have to change your style and how you ride in the wet, basically?
It's not easy. It's not easy, especially because we didn't ride, especially MotoGP, we didn't ride on the wet condition this weekend. But you have to, the problem is that you have to adapt super quick, because if you lose time on the first 2-3 laps, maybe it's too late later on. So the most important thing is try to understand as soon as possible the grip of the track, to understand how much you can lean, where you can accelerate or not. And in the other side, when you are in Europe, more or less there is the same amount of water everywhere. But in places like this, you never know. So you have to discover how is the track on the other side, how is the track in the straight. So it's very difficult for the riders to understand this. And at the end, the key is to be quick, to understand the conditions and to adapt it.
Aleix, thank you for your time. Good luck this afternoon.
Thank you, we'll need it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Aprilia's Aleix Espargaro. Then here is your revised Moto2 grid then here in Thailand for the short 5-lap sprint.
Arbolino, Salach, Canet on your front row. Jake Dixon, Alonso Lopez and Ayagura, World Championship challenger, on row 2. His chief rival and leader, Augusto Fernandez, heads row 3 ahead of Joe Roberts, and the sole Thai rider left in the race, it's Kevin Kubo. Vietti, Kelly and Baltus on row 4 ahead of Harder, Arenas and Schrotter. Pedro Acosta starts 16th ahead of Zonta van den Gorberg and Bo Benschneider. Sam Lowe's, Jorge Navarro and Alessandro Zacconi take you down to the 7th row. On row 8 we have Nicolo Antonelli, Marcos Ramirez and Simone Corsi. We will have 25 riders who will take the restart. Manuel Gonzalez, the last of them, he will start from pit lane.
So in 50 seconds time, they can see on the countdown clock, in under a minute's time the pit lane will open, and this time around we'll hope we'll get some action. Although that's a rather ominous looking sight, isn't it? Going through turns 8, 9, 10 there, off in the distance at turn number 3. Is that bringing in some fresh rain right at the top end of the circuit? I don't know if it's just mist or, well, it's absolutely lashing down.
Can't see a thing out the back of the circuit.
Yeah, you can't. Just out the back of turn 3, there's no visibility whatsoever. Marcos Ramirez then, he's going to be the first man to lead the reduced field out onto this circuit for a reduced, well, it's been reduced twice now, hasn't it? From 24 to 16 laps initially, and then having completed just under half race distance of the shortened restart. We are now primed and ready to go, hopefully, fingers crossed, for a 5-lap sprint. Pit lane then is open. The green flag waves at the end of pit lane. And as the latest Bargo just made a very good point there to Simon Craigbile down in pit lane, this is all about now who's going to be able to calculate and assess where those grip levels are, where the patches of water are at their worst. Fortune, without any question, will favour the brave here in Thailand.
And Ayagura, who goes out onto the racetrack with 30 seconds to spare. I think we're all present and correct with everyone out of pit lane to take this restart. Of course, he comes into this race 2 points behind Augusto Fernandez. He was on course to cut back to 1 before the race was restarted, and they're now getting an idea. One of them's already sailed off on the outside of turn 3. You could see, even from the helicopter shot, how much water is being kicked up at such a slow speed. We've got one of them already with his hand up. I think that's Jake Dixon, the Aspirants. Look how much it's falling. This is where we thought the rain was coming in from, and it is coming in again. That is torrential. I don't think they can start the race in that condition. Yeah,
I don't think they can, Lewis. The pit lane has closed. We saw this coming in on the horizon, haven't we? Yeah, we've got riders putting their hands up here. Jake Dixon, one of them. I don't know whether...
Yeah, red flag.
Yeah, it's red flagged. That rain is closing in so quickly again. Can you believe it?
That's two failed attempts now.
So, right at the final of the circuit, the end of that 1,000-metre back straight, we can barely see beyond turn 3 off into the distance. You can see there Pekka Bagnaia. Yeah, he's just realised now the race has been delayed yet again. Yeah, finito. Well, maybe not finito. We hope it's not finished, but he's pointing to the big screen there. He's looking at himself on the big screen directly opposite the main grandstand, and he will see now that the race has been delayed yet again. The red flags return. That will all be from the circuit feed that the race direction can see. They'll be getting information fed back to them by the trackside marshals as well. But right over in the far part of the circuit, turns 3 in particular, and then in this section, when you come into 8, 9 and 10, we've had another massive and quick deterioration of conditions. What a turnaround this has been. Augusto Fernandez.
Well, he's missed the pit entry. He's coming. He looks like he's coming around to the grid there. He's looked over to his left and seen everyone coming to pit lane. So back across he comes, across the curb and into pit lane. Whoever the rain gods are, they've got a sense of humour, haven't they? Because that's effectively our 3rd delay to this Moto2 race. Of course, the original start was going to be in the dry. It then started to rain, and we had the rain on grid procedure. And then seconds before pit lane was due to open for the 2nd restart, we had a red flag because of a heavy downpour. And then the riders, just as they left pit lane and just as the pit lane was closing once again, the red flags had to return because that heavy downpour that we could see in the distance is now coming directly over this Chang International circuit.
Yeah, you can barely see turn 3 from that helicopter shot. You can just see, look at the water pouring out the bottom of Tony Arbolino's belly pan and off that rear tyre as well. There's not a lot of rain, as you can see from that live shot looking down towards the top end of pit lane. It's all down in sort of the top end of the circuit. Turn number 3 and then into sort of 6, 7, 8, 9. Red flag back out again then. Well, there's barely any rain falling in that part of the under the main grandstand. Fabio Quartararo now coming to speak to his good friend Tony Arbolino. Right on scene there is IRTA representative Rick Crichton. So what the race direction do next, and what do the organisation do now to try and find a way to get this 5-lap sprint race done and dusted? Surely, oh, here we go. It will not be restarted then. Here we go. Breaking news then here in Buriram. The Moto2 race here, a badly, severely disrupted rain race, will not be restarted. Half points will be awarded as 2/3 of the race distance was not completed.
So there's your winner.
Yeah, there is your race winner, Tony Arbolino. No wonder the Elf Mark Vides Racing team are looking delighted. Tony Arbolino then takes a Moto2 victory for the first time, not in the fashion he would have wanted, but a win is a win.
That turn 12 mistake from Philippe Salach suddenly looks quite significant, doesn't it? It cost him a Grand Prix victory.
So half points will be awarded. Philippe Salach, though, still does have a big smile on his face because it's a first Moto2 podium for the Gresini Racing team. He put a hot-footed to Parc Ferme right now.
2nd place for Salach, 3rd for Aaron Canet. So let's try and work this out. Arbolino will get 12.5 points, Salach will get 10. Canet for 3rd will get 8, and then we'll count it down. Jake Dixon in 4th will get 6.5 points. Lopez for 5th will get 5.5. Agura for 6th will get 5 points. And then Augusto Fernandez for 7th will get 4.5. So Ayagura has gained half a point on Augusto Fernandez. It's now a 1.5 point lead in the championship.
Not too sure that Aaron Canet needs these sunglasses to head down a Parc Ferme, but not the victory or the fashion that he would have wanted to have taken it, but nevertheless.